People often ask me, why is reading cards fascinating? My answer is simple. Reading cards is fascinating because their visual language enables us to bypass everything we know or we think we know. We often feel the need to explain our situation and our condition. This is not possible, however, without attachment to words, cultural context, and our relationship to both words and context. There are the cards, and then there are the stories about the cards. If we just look at the cards without the need to understand anything, we arrive at the clarity that makes us realize that there is no knowledge that's not anchored in stories, fictions, and symbolic relations. I can say the Empress is like Venus, the goddess of love and money. I can also say the Empress is like the earth, a mother, nurturing and fertile. And finally, I can say the Empress is a calculated boss who is on top of everything. But what is all this? Stories. Which one is more correct? One of them, all of them, or none of them? Stories have a correlation to the imagination, but the imagination is the product of the mind. If you want the thing itself, not the story about the thing, then what? When I look at the cards, I can say, the Empress is the Empress, the Hermit is the Hermit, and the Moon is the Moon. In making such statements, what I do is acknowledge functions. Each performs their job. The Empress sits on a throne and issues commands. The Hermit is searching, and the Moon is going from shining brightly to being dark. So we identify functions, and therefore we have first-hand experiences of the cards. If I say, the Hermit is the philosopher who's tired of the world and renouncing it, he retreats to the mountain to get rid of his mind. Well, I'm creating a myth. Okay, this is the advanced version and a little different than the one you find in the standard little white book about the tarot that associates the hermit with spiritual attainment, inner life, or the unveiling of secrets. We talk about many cartomatic schools and traditions, but the main difference between them lies in this distinction. You either look at the primary function that the figures on the cards or the four suits represent, or you look at the individual stories about the cards that people have contributed throughout the ages, some more interesting than others. Granted, everything is a story. When I say the Empress is the Empress, desiring to prioritize the job that the Empress performs rather than what she is, what I do is point to an embedded story already. But I like to think that it's a simpler story, a story that's stripped off, embellished, and made up symbolic content. And as such, it's a story that's closer to clear insight. Cards remind us of our real job, and how clear are we on what our true job is? If you have to explain your situation and condition all the time, you are not clear on what your job is. So the cards help us understand what the situation is and how we can relate to it according to our function determined by the situation. The condition, however, for gaining insight is that you bring a real question to the cards. Without the question, you just make things up. In other words, we read cards because they clarify for us the positions we have available to us. They spell out for us what kind of power we have to act in a given situation, showing us also the consequences of acting outside of our situation and function. Being able to cut it to the bones is not a small thing. That's why I call this kind of cartomancy martial arts cartomancy, because it's anchored in understanding less and seeing more. It's a paradox that the more people understand their condition and situation, the less they actually see the thing itself. So reading like the devil is like wielding a samurai sword. It's like saying, off with their heads, the heads of myth and story, so that the obvious can emerge. So when I say, read your cards by looking at the thing itself, not having secondhand experiences of the thing, I say, see what you see, not what you desire to see. Welcome to a fast track to your martial arts cartomantic Zen practice.